Picture this. It's 1953, New York City. A man named Frank Olson is having drinks with his colleagues at a cabin retreat in rural Maryland. They're CIA officers, biochemists, scientists, all working on America's most classified project. Someone slips LSD into Frank's drink. He doesn't know it. None of them do. It's an experiment. Frank Olson is the test subject, and he has no idea his own agency just drugged him. Within hours, Frank is hallucinating, paranoid, terrified. He's convinced people are trying to kill him. His colleagues laugh it off. It's just the LSD, they say. It'll wear off. But it doesn't wear off. Frank gets worse. Days later, he's in a New York hotel room with a CIA handler supposedly watching over him. At 2:30 a.m. on November 28, 1953, Frank Olson crashes through a closed window on the 13th floor and falls to his death on the sidewalk below. The CIA calls it suicide. They tell Frank's family he had a nervous breakdown. They pay them compensation and ask them to stay quiet. For 22 years, that's the official story. Frank Olson killed himself. Case closed. But in 1975, a government investigation uncovers something that will shock the world. Frank Olson didn't just have a breakdown. He was murdered, and his death was just one tiny piece of the most disturbing, illegal, immoral program the United States government ever conducted, Project MKUltra. This isn't conspiracy theory. This isn't speculation. This is documented fact. Between 1953 and 1973, the CIA conducted mind control experiments on thousands of unwitting Americans. They dosed people with LSD without their knowledge. They tortured prisoners. They destroyed minds. They ruined lives. They broke every law, every ethical standard, every basic human right, and they did it all in secret, with unlimited funding, with no oversight, believing they were protecting America from the Soviets. And here's the most disturbing part, we only know about a fraction of what they did. In 1973, when the program was exposed, CIA Director Richard Helms ordered the destruction of all MKUltra files. Thousands of documents were shredded, burned, erased from existence. What we know about MKUltra comes from the few files that survived by accident, documents that were misfiled, overlooked, hidden in the wrong drawer. The full truth, we'll never know it, but what we do know is absolutely horrifying. Let me take you back to where this nightmare began. It's 1950. The Korean War has just started, and American soldiers are being captured by North Korean and Chinese forces. Then something strange starts happening. American POWs are confessing to war crimes they didn't commit. They're denouncing America. They're praising communism. They're speaking like their personalities have been completely rewritten. The CIA panics. They believe the communists have developed a secret weapon, mind control, brainwashing, some kind of drug or technique that can turn loyal Americans into communist puppets. If the Soviets and Chinese can do this, America needs to do it too. Better, faster, more effective. The Cold War isn't just about bombs and missiles anymore. It's about controlling the human mind. In April 1953, CIA Director Allen Dulles approves Project MKUltra. The goal is simple: develop techniques to control human behavior, make people do things against their will, create the perfect truth serum for interrogations, produce assassins who don't remember being programmed, erase memories, implant false ones, turn human beings into programmable machines. The man put in charge is Sidney Gottlieb, a chemist with a club foot and a stutter who grows poisonous plants as a hobby. Gottlieb is brilliant, ruthless, and completely immoral. He doesn't see test subjects as people, he sees them as data points. He's given unlimited funding, complete secrecy, and one directive: produce results. No rules, no oversight, no ethics committees, just results. Gottlieb starts with LSD, lysergic acid diethylamide, a powerful hallucinogen that had been discovered just a decade earlier. In small doses, it makes people see colors and patterns. In large doses, it destroys your sense of reality. You can't tell what's real and what's imaginary. Your personality dissolves. Your ego disappears. You become completely suggestible. Gottlieb thinks, if we dose someone with LSD, can we reprogram them while they're vulnerable? Can we implant commands they'll follow without knowing why? Can we create a Manchurian candidate, a sleeper agent who activates on command? But to test this, he needs test subjects. Lots of them. And he can't ask for volunteers because then they'd know what was happening. The whole point is to test how LSD affects people who don't expect it. So Gottlieb gets approval to drug American citizens without their knowledge or consent. He starts with his own colleagues. At CIA parties, he spikes drinks. At agency retreats, he puts LSD in coffee. He wants to see how CIA officers react when they're unexpectedly high. Most of them have bad trips, paranoia, terror, psychosis. Some enjoy it, some quit the agency afterward, and one of them, Frank Olson, jumps out a window. But Gottlieb doesn't stop. Frank's death is just collateral damage. He expands the program. He recruits doctors, psychiatrists, university researchers. He funds them through front organizations so no one knows it's CIA money. He tells them they're doing cutting-edge research on human consciousness. He doesn't tell them they're developing torture techniques. MKUltra projects start popping up across America. At Columbia University, researchers dose mental patients with LSD every day for weeks. At the University of Oklahoma, they test how electroshock affects memory. At McGill University in Canada, psychiatrist Donald Ewan Cameron develops psychic driving, a technique where patients are put in drug-induced comas, played audio loops of repeated phrases, and given massive electroshock treatments to reset their brains. Cameron's theory is that you can cure mental illness by erasing the patient's entire personality and rebuilding it from scratch. To test this, he takes vulnerable patients, people with depression, anxiety, PTSD, and he destroys them. He puts them in sensory deprivation chambers for days. He induces comas with barbiturates. He gives them LSD. He plays the same message hundreds of times. You are a bad mother. You are a bad wife. Then he hits them with electroshock, not the medical dose, but 30 to 40 times the normal amount, enough to cause brain damage. His patients lose their memories. They forget their children's names. They forget how to eat, how to dress themselves, how to use a toilet. Cameron has literally erased their minds, and the CIA is paying him to do it. They're funding his research through a front organization called the Society for the Investigation of Human Ecology. Cameron has no idea it's CIA money, or maybe he doesn't care. One of Cameron's patients is a woman named Val Orlikov. She goes to him for postpartum depression. He tells her he can help. He puts her in his sleep room, a converted horse stable where patients are kept in drug-induced comas. For 86 days, Val is unconscious. When she wakes up, she doesn't know who she is. She doesn't recognize her husband. She's lost years of her life. Her mind is gone. Cameron calls it a success. The CIA funds more experiments. But MKUltra isn't just happening in hospitals. It's happening in prisons, in brothels, on the streets. The CIA sets up safe houses in San Francisco and New York, apartments where prostitutes bring clients who are then secretly drugged with LSD. CIA agents sit behind two-way mirrors, watching and taking notes as unsuspecting men trip on acid, have breakdowns, reveal secrets. They call it Operation Midnight Climax. George Hunter White, a federal narcotics agent, runs it. His job is to dose people, observe them, see if LSD makes them talk. He furnishes the safe houses with bizarre decor, velvet paintings, mirrored ceilings. He stocks them with alcohol and drugs. The prostitutes are told to keep the men drinking, keep them talking, and when the men are sufficiently drugged, CIA agents question them, looking for vulnerabilities, testing techniques. Some men have terrible trips. Some become violent. Some never recover. But the CIA doesn't care. These are John's visiting prostitutes. Who's going to believe them if they complain about being drugged? It's the perfect cover. The experiments continue for nearly a decade. Meanwhile, Gottlieb is testing other substances. LSD isn't the only drug he's interested in. He experiments with heroin, with cocaine, with barbiturates, with mescaline. He tests chemicals that cause amnesia, chemicals that cause paralysis, chemicals that cause heart attacks without being detectable in an autopsy. He's developing an arsenal of invisible weapons, poisons and drugs that can kill or incapacitate without leaving evidence. The CIA even tests LSD on military personnel. In 1955, Army chemical warfare researchers give LSD to soldiers at Fort Bragg without telling them what it is. Some soldiers have psychotic breaks. One tries to drive his car into oncoming traffic. Another attacks a fellow soldier. The Army classifies it all as research and moves on. But the experiments get darker. The CIA starts testing on prisoners, people who have no ability to refuse, who can't complain, who society doesn't care about. At the Lexington Narcotics Hospital in Kentucky, drug addicts are given LSD for 77 consecutive days. Not once, not occasionally, 77 days in a row. Researchers want to see if continuous dosing makes people more compliant. Most subjects develop permanent psychological problems. In prisons across America, inmates are offered reduced sentences if they volunteer for medical experiments. They're not told the experiments involve LSD, electroshock, sensory deprivation. They think they're testing new medications or treatments. Instead, they're being used as guinea pigs for mind control techniques. And it's not just adults. Gottlieb funds research on children. At Harvard, psychologist Henry Murray conducts experiments on college students, subjecting them to intense psychological stress to see if he can break them. One of his subjects is a brilliant but troubled young man named Ted Kaczynski. Years later, Kaczynski will become the Unabomber. Some researchers believe Murray's experiments contributed to his mental breakdown and radicalization. By the 1960s, MKUltra has expanded into 149 separate projects involving 80 institutions, universities, hospitals, prisons, pharmaceutical companies. Thousands of people have been dosed, tested, traumatized, and it's all completely illegal. No informed consent, no medical ethics, no oversight, just secret experiments on unwitting Americans, funded by taxpayer money conducted by their own government. Then in 1973, everything almost comes crashing down. Seymour Hersh, an investigative journalist, is working on a story about CIA domestic operations. He starts hearing rumors about mind control experiments. Sources mention something called MKUltra. Richard Helms, the CIA director, realizes the program is about to be exposed. Helms makes a decision. He orders the destruction of all MKUltra files. Every document, every record, every piece of evidence destroyed. CIA employees spend days shredding documents, burning files. They eliminate the paper trail. If there are no documents, there's no proof. No proof, no prosecutions. But they make a mistake. Some financial records were misfiled under a different program. They survived the purge. In 1975, during the Church Committee investigations into CIA abuses, these documents are discovered. They're not detailed, just budget records, funding allocations, project names, but it's enough. Investigators realize the CIA conducted illegal human experimentation for 2 decades. The revelations shock America. Congressional hearings are held. CIA officials are called to testify. They claim they were protecting America from communist brainwashing. They say the Soviets were doing worse. They insist no one was seriously harmed. They lie. Again and again they lie. Victims start coming forward. People who'd had mysterious breakdowns, who'd been institutionalized, who'd lost years of their lives. They now know why. They were MKUltra test subjects. The CIA drugged them, tortured them, destroyed their minds, and the government covered it up for decades. Frank Olson's family demands answers. The CIA had told them Frank committed suicide. Now they learn he was dosed with LSD without his knowledge. They demand an investigation. The CIA admits they drugged him but maintains he jumped. The Olson family doesn't believe it. They have Frank's body exhumed. A forensic examination reveals evidence suggesting Frank was struck on the head before going through the window. He didn't jump. He was murdered. But no one is prosecuted. Sidney Gottlieb, the man who ran MKUltra, retires to his farm. He grows Christmas trees and tends his poison garden. He's never charged with a crime. In 1977, he testifies before Congress, claiming he was just following orders, that everything he did was legal at the time. He shows no remorse. He dies in 1999, never having faced justice. The victims of MKUltra try to sue. The government fights them for years. Eventually, some receive small settlements, tens of thousands of dollars for having their lives destroyed. Most get nothing. The CIA neither admits nor denies specific allegations. The settlements include non-disclosure agreements. The truth remains buried. In 1977, CIA Director Stansfield Turner admits to Congress that MKUltra was unlawful and improper. He claims the program ended in 1973, but he also admits that with most records destroyed, the full scope of MKUltra will never be known. How many people were dosed? How many died? How many lives were destroyed? We'll never know. Here's what we do know. At least 185 researchers and assistants participated. At least 80 institutions were involved. At least thousands of Americans were unwitting test subjects. At least dozens died, or were permanently damaged. And those are just the cases we know about from surviving documents. The real numbers are almost certainly much higher. And the techniques developed by MKUltra, they didn't disappear. The CIA's torture manual used at Guantanamo Bay includes techniques developed during MKUltra: sensory deprivation, stress positions, sleep deprivation. The program officially ended, but the knowledge remained. Some MKUltra researchers went on to have distinguished careers. Some became famous in their fields. They published papers, won awards, trained the next generation of psychiatrists and psychologists. They never mentioned their CIA work. Their students have no idea their mentor once tortured mental patients for the government. Valerie LaCalle, the woman Dr. Cameron destroyed, spent the rest of her life fighting for justice. She eventually won a settlement from the CIA, $100,000 for having her mind erased. She used the money to help other victims. She testified at hearings, gave interviews, refused to stay quiet. She wanted the world to know what the CIA did to her. She died in 1990, still haunted by lost memories. Ted Kaczynski, the Harvard student subjected to psychological experiments, began his bombing campaign in 1978. His manifesto railed against technology and government control. Some psychologists believe his participation in Murray's MKUltra-funded experiments contributed to his radicalization. We'll never know for certain, but the timing is striking. In 1984, the CIA's Inspector General wrote a report admitting that MKUltra experiments were conducted in areas where the CIA had little or no experience. Translation: they had no idea what they were doing, they just dosed people and watched what happened. It was reckless, illegal, and resulted in deaths and permanent injuries. In 1995, President Clinton formally apologized to MKUltra victims. He called the experiments wrong and repugnant. He promised such abuses would never happen again. But the apology came 40 years too late for Frank Olson, for Valor Lecaux, for countless others whose names we don't even know. Today, conspiracy theories swirl around MKUltra. Some people claim the program never ended, that it just went deeper underground. Others believe modern mind control techniques are even more sophisticated. The truth is we don't know. With 99% of MKUltra documents destroyed, we're left with fragments, pieces, survivors' testimonies. But here's what's undeniable. For 20 years the CIA conducted illegal human experimentation on unwitting American citizens. They drugged them, tortured them, destroyed their minds, all in the name of national security. They violated the Nuremberg Code, which America helped write after World War II to prevent exactly this kind of abuse. They violated their own laws. They violated basic human decency. And they almost got away with it. If a few financial records hadn't been misfiled, if a few documents hadn't survived the purge, we might never have known. MKUltra would be a rumor, a conspiracy theory, something people dismissed as paranoid fantasy. The lesson of MKUltra isn't just about government overreach or Cold War paranoia, it's about what happens when power operates in complete secrecy, with no accountability, convinced that any action is justified if the cause is important enough. Sidney Gottlieb genuinely believed he was protecting America. He believed mind control research was necessary to counter Soviet capabilities. He believed the ends justified the means. But the means were torture. The means were destroying innocent lives. The means were treating human beings as laboratory animals, and no end, no matter how important, justifies that. Frank Olson's son Eric spent his entire adult life investigating his father's death. He became an expert on MKUltra, on CIA assassination techniques, on government cover-ups. He interviewed witnesses, examined documents, consulted forensic experts. He concluded with absolute certainty that his father was murdered because Frank was planning to quit the CIA and might have talked about what he knew. Eric Olson never got justice for his father. The CIA never admitted murder. No one was prosecuted, but Eric made sure his father's story was told. He made sure the world knew what MKUltra really was, not a research program, but a campaign of state-sponsored torture and murder. Today, if you visit the CIA's website, you'll find sanitized mentions of MKUltra. They call it a Cold War program that raised ethical concerns. They don't mention the deaths, the destroyed lives, the permanent psychological damage inflicted on thousands of Americans. They present it as a regrettable but understandable mistake made in a different time. But it wasn't a mistake, it was a choice. A deliberate, sustained choice to treat human beings as expendable test subjects, and the people who made that choice were never held accountable. The full truth of MKUltra died in a bonfire of shredded documents in 1973. We know just enough to be horrified, but the complete story, the full scope of what the CIA did, is lost forever, and that might be the most disturbing part of all. Somewhere in those destroyed files were names, places, experiments we'll never know about, victims who'll never be acknowledged, crimes that will never be answered for. MKUltra officially ended in 1973, but its legacy continues. It's in the torture techniques used at black sites. It's in the distrust Americans feel toward their government. It's in every conspiracy theory about mind control and government experimentation. Some of those theories are paranoid nonsense, but thanks to MKUltra, we know that some of them might be true. Because the most terrifying thing about MKUltra isn't what we know, it's what we don't. It's the gaps, the missing files, the destroyed evidence. It's knowing that your government conducted massive illegal experiments on its own citizens and successfully covered it up for decades. It's knowing that if a few documents hadn't survived by accident, we might never have learned the truth. And it's the question that haunts anyone who studies MKUltra. If they did this, if they got away with it for so long, what else don't we know? What other programs existed? What other secrets are still buried? We'll probably never know. But Frank Olson fell from a window in 1953, and we only learned why in 1975. 22 years of lies. Imagine what might still be hidden. Imagine what truths might emerge 50 years from now, when current classified programs are finally exposed. MKUltra is a reminder that the most disturbing conspiracy theories are sometimes true, that power without oversight leads to abuse, that national security can be used to justify almost anything, and that the difference between a free society and a totalitarian one isn't what the government does, it's whether they can do it in secret with no consequences forever. Sidney Gottlieb died believing he'd served his country. He never apologized. He never expressed regret. He spent his retirement growing Christmas trees on his farm, a quiet old man tending his garden. The poison plants he'd once cultivated as a hobby were long gone, but the poison he'd spread through MKUltra, that poison destroyed lives for generations. And somewhere in a file that was never shredded, in a memory that was never erased, in a family that lost someone to a mysterious breakdown or suicide or heart attack in the 1950s or 60s, somewhere, there are more victims we'll never know about, more lives destroyed, more secrets buried. That's the true horror of MKUltra, not just what they did, but what we'll never know they did.